In February 2023, a young Conejotako uploaded this crappy video, thinking it was an interesting topic. Meanwhile, the ReZero novel was stuck in what many so-called experts and Twitter critics called its worst arc. At the height of this worst arc, the Empire was locked in battle with its enemy in the heart of its capital city. Just as the fighting seemed to reach its conclusion, the dead began to rise and join the siege against the capital. But it wasn't only the recently fallen who rose again. Those who had died with unfulfilled goals also returned. A witch raised them and forced them into her service. Their purpose was to bring down the Empire. Once the Empire was destroyed, their next target would be the Kingdom of Lugunica, the same kingdom that the witch Sphinx had tried to destroy in the past, only to be stopped by a young Wilhelm. Amid all this chaos, Ulbik, a servant of the observers with foresight, said,
"The witch of the kingdom, the night weeping of the city-states, the collapse of the Holy Kingdom, and the great disaster of the Empire, the four disasters that will destroy the world. Their time draws near, even at this very moment."
Back then, I wasn't keeping up with the novel. I knew it existed, of course, but I wasn't in any hurry to catch up. Even though I was ignorant at the time, I remember how the line about the four great calamities caused a huge stir. Most people had no idea what that revelation meant. Honestly, it's no surprise. Hardly anyone actually reads the written material. But now, with my honorary PhD in this whole mess, I can finally solve the mystery that the 2023 Conejotako completely missed. Welcome to the Four Horsemen, who are destined to bring ruin to the world and whom Subaru must stop. Let's start with the Horsemen, about whom we know almost nothing. Even if you read all 300+ chapters of ReZero, you'd still find that there's barely any lore about the nation of Gusteko, where this disaster will unfold. Personally, I'm really excited about Gusteko. We only know a little about it thanks to a character you're already familiar with who grew up and lived there. Trust me, you know this character very well because they're so attractive that they've made not-so-gay men and not-so-straight women alike question their sexuality. I'm talking about none other than Elsa Granhirt. Let's be honest, Elsa's got a nice pair of side stories that take place before episode 1 of the anime. One tells us how she grew up, gained her powers, and started working under Capella. The other reveals a scandal that forced her to change jobs for a while, which is how she ended up in Lugunica. From these stories, we learn a little about daily life in Gusteko. Unlike Lugunica, which has royal knights, and Wallachia, which has divine generals, Gusteko has Templar knights. There's someone considered Gusteko's equivalent of Reinhard, though there's no official illustration of him. He's known only as the Mad Prince. Most interestingly, Gusteko is a land of extreme religious fanatics. Their highest priority is worshipping spirits. We catch a glimpse of this in Amelia's movie. The reason Puck was able to easily track down and avenge his daughter was that the leader of her attackers was from Gusteko. The moment he realized he'd angered a great spirit, he immediately gave in to Puck's demands and swore never to cross him again. So what does all this have to do with one of the great calamities? Simple. Gusteko is the only nation ruled by a spirit, a great spirit named Odd Glass, whom you see on screen. They say he appoints the nation's leaders and is the reason the land is locked in eternal winter. If I recall correctly, it's also implied that the Templar Knights receive blessings that allow them to survive otherwise fatal blows. In Elsa's story, for example, she drops her guard after believing she killed one of the knights, only for him to incapacitate her. Some say these powers come from Gusteko itself, but if Odd Glass runs the entire system, it wouldn't be surprising if he granted those abilities directly. In short, Odd Glass is vital to the nation's functioning. This means that when we read Ulbik's prophecy about the collapse of the Holy Kingdom, we can't help but fear the worst. If Odd Glass collapses, or is killed, the entire Gusteko structure would fall with him. From what we've seen, the people deeply revere and rely on their ruling spirit. Their military strength is formidable. This raises the question, what kind of event could threaten and overwhelm the military might of Gusteko? Honestly, I have no idea. But if I had to make a quick prediction, maybe the Mad Prince, Gusteko's Reinhard, could betray his own nation. He dislikes spirits and probably the way his country is run. He could seize the opportunity by collaborating with Gusteko's prisoner of war, another great spirit, to bring down the nation from within. When Arc 9 first started, some fans speculated that Aldebaran would head to Gusteko and introduce allies from there. In the end, however, he went to Kararagi, the next nation on the list and the setting of another of the four great calamities. Did you know that Subaru's desire for carnal relations caused him to avoid this horseman and even turn him into an ally in an alternate timeline? And he didn't even realize it? It's like Subaru saved the world by accident. I'm talking about the other story in the Rem If route. Most people know the story of Subaru and Rem running away together and starting a family. We later see this family in an illustration set about 10 years later. But there's another story in the same timeline that doesn't take place 10 years later. It takes place a few days after they decide to run away together. In this story, we see the struggles they both face adapting to the new country they escaped to. They are also dealing with the guilt of having left their loved ones to face Betelgeuse alone. But that peace is short-lived when they get caught up in a strange theft. You see, since an alternate Subaru managed to sort things out here, we already know how this catastrophe is going to begin. The disaster known as the Night Cry of the City-States begins when someone steals a valuable item belonging to Zarestia, the great spirit who lives in this nation. People say that she is a spirit that represents the power of wind. She is older than the witches, but she always sleeps because she wants to kill. She lives in a hard-to-reach place, but one survivor of the Oni clan, the same clan as Rem and Ram, manages to reach her using the corpses of the expedition that traveled with her. This woman grabs Zarestia's artifact, which gives her half of the Great Spirit's power. With her treasure stolen, Zarestia, who already didn't like humans, blamed the people of Kararagi for the theft. A massacre against its citizens began and continued until the things that had been stolen were returned. In this different story, the first people she meets are Subaru and Rem, which helped stop the massacre from spreading. After learning the details of what happened, they helped her. In fact, Zarestia was so charmed and grateful for their assistance that in the future, she even considered granting part of her power to the child of this couple, Rigel. I was going to end this part of the video with my own prediction about how this disaster might start in the main story, but it won't be necessary. The catastrophe of Zarestia is already happening right now. Yes, right now, as Aldebaran is causing major changes in the world of ReZero. At this very moment, Zarestia's catastrophe has exploded. But since Subaru isn't around to stop it, things don't look very promising. Luckily, there's an anime character in the same city that Zarestia attacked. I'm talking about Anastasia. She and her band of mercenaries, along with that nation's own Reinhard, are investigating how to deal with this great spirit. We just heard that Zarestia and Anastasia have agreed to stop fighting and are getting ready to face the enemy, who now has Zarestia's stolen powers. To be honest, I have very high expectations for this side story. I'm pretty sure that the most exciting part of the fight against Aldebaran will happen at the same time as the development of Zarestia's catastrophe. And don't think I'm saying this out of fanboy bias. It's because it was recently revealed where Aldebaran is heading to finally get rid of Subaru, and the name of the nation mentioned just so happens to be in these very lands. This means there's a good chance we'll see these two events happen at the same time. But I think it's about time we talk about the disaster we know absolutely nothing about. It's ironic that the catastrophe that foretells the witch's return to the world is the one we actually know the least about. It's interesting because ReZero introduced this character right from episode 1, and now, almost 13 years since the novel was published, we still don't know exactly how her catastrophe will unfold. It's curious, to say the least. We know that the witch is currently sealed thanks to the actions of the hero party from 400 years ago, but she has also emerged from her seal on more than one occasion. So how is that possible? Is it a plot hole? Will Kays use this as another example of a plot hole in one of his videos about mistakes in the writing of ReZero Season 2? By the way, that was just a joke. I've seen Kays' videos, and I think they're good. I don't fully agree with everything, but I'm planning to make a detailed response video soon. It'll take some time. And yes, I'll do it for free. Let's get back to the main point. The novel explains that the witch was so powerful that she couldn't be fully sealed. She could only be somewhat restrained. Now that I think about it, the logic is similar to what happens with Reinhard at one point in the story. People say that the kingdom of Wallachia wanted to meet with Reinhard, but only if he wore a collar that greatly reduced his power. But remember, if you take something away from infinity, you still have infinity left. It's the same with the witch. She has some limitations, but she's still extremely powerful. This was proven when, in the story, we see that when she appears, there are people who manage to stop her. For example, Cecilus, the Reinhard of a neighboring country, was able to hold her back together with Chisha in a side story. In the main story, we saw how the Emperor, along with Aldebaran's strength and Yorna's, managed to stop one of her manifestations. But that was only possible because they were fighting a very weak version of the witch. Even though I said there isn't much information about how to deal with her, there is some lore that allows us to speculate. According to old stories, when the witch caused a disaster 400 years ago, she ate half the world. The only thing that remained is the world we see in the anime today. That's scary because if she were ever completely unsealed, she could wipe out all life again whenever she wanted, and Subaru wouldn't be able to stop her. The witch gives him his power. Would she really let her own servant stop her? Strangely enough, it seems she actually would. In fact, in Season 2, the last words she says to Subaru are a plea to one day come and kill her. I think the author is fully aware of this absurd power gap, and that's why he's been leaving clues to set things up for the future, giving Subaru at least a fighting chance. I also believe another factor holding the witch back is Satella. For those who don't know, the Witch of Envy and Satella are two separate entities, but they share the same body, and both of them love Subaru. I think it's Satella's side that helps control the witch. But the question is, for how long? I want to talk about speculation. I think there's one overlooked piece of material that might actually connect to this catastrophe. In 2016, when ReZero was shown as an anime, White Fox released some random pictures to remember the event, but they didn't seem related to the story. For example, there's the image of Subaru meeting Emilia, which should have happened in episode 1 but didn't. It just seemed like a meaningful way to show what happened when they first met. It could have remained a secret, but the author later said that it was a scene that would probably be in the last part of the story or just before it. I know that all catastrophes will eventually impact the world, but I'm 100% sure the witch's catastrophe will be the last one to be resolved. It's part of the main idea of the story. Usually, the first mystery in a series is also the last one solved. What will happen? My prediction is the mural we see is one that is carved and painted after the witch's catastrophe is resolved. It's a way of honoring the two heroes who saved the world. Maybe Subaru was already dead, or maybe the two of them had to become the heroes from 400 years ago to finally stop the disaster Flugel and Satella couldn't stop. Now let's move on to the last point of this section. Finally, we've reached the only catastrophe for which we have all the available information. In fact, there are almost 180 web novel chapters covering everything that happened. For your information, the part of the novel where Aldebaran betrays Subaru has only 42 chapters. This shows that there is a lot we could talk about. Unfortunately, it's such a big topic that I won't be able to explain everything. So, expect me to just give you a general idea. I think the Empire catastrophe is the second hardest one after the witch catastrophe in the kingdom. I think that because the Empire was shaken by a version of Echidna who had under her control not only the great spirit of the nation, but also powerful figures within it. But the witch didn't stop at enslaving the strongest people of the present. She also revived and enslaved the strongest people in history. She used Valga Cromwell's strategies from the ancient war to attack the Empire. If you follow my channel, you already know that Old Man Ram is a brilliant military strategist. Do you see why Subaru died more times in this story than in any other? He died so often that he had to team up with Aldebaran just to get the result he wanted. To be honest, I don't understand why Arc 7 didn't connect with so many people. If anyone wants to share their perspective on that, please watch my video on Arc 7 first. But anyway, let's get back to the topic. This Empire catastrophe threatened not only the Empire's organization, but also the country itself. The spirit of this region, Muspel, makes sure the land stays fertile and habitable. But if the witch's plan had worked, Muspel would have died, and the whole country would have been destroyed along with him. I also remember enjoying this arc because the Empire was in bad shape when the catastrophe broke out. The Emperor had been betrayed by the man he trusted most, and he needed to get his throne back as soon as possible to prepare for the big problem that was coming. It was like when you're about to submit your final paper and your computer crashes 1 hour before the deadline. That's how bad things were. The other countries were completely unaware of the disaster that was about to happen, but Emperor Vincent Vallachia was very smart. He got a diary from one of the Sin archbishops. With it, he began to understand things that no ordinary person could ever comprehend. For example, he knew that Subaru always made things turn out well for him. That's why he always tried to keep Subaru on his side. And whenever Subaru told Vincent about the craziest things that were about to happen, Vincent never laughed at him or dismissed what he said. He believed him, because he knew Subaru wasn't crazy, just very strange. I remember in Arc 7, Subaru spends several pages worrying about how to tell Vincent what he saw without sounding crazy. But Vincent believes him right away. I know I should be talking about the Great Catastrophe, but I ended up talking about Vincent Vallachia. And that's not really off topic, because discussing the Great Catastrophe is directly tied to him. After all, it had been prophesied that this calamity would begin once he died. Instead of panicking, The emperor accepted that things were going to happen, so he made all the necessary preparations for the nation to defend itself when the time came. But he didn't know that his right-hand man, Chisha Gold, had a plan within his plan. When Vincent was supposed to die, Chisha dressed up and tricked everyone, making it look like the emperor had died when in fact it was only his closest helper who died. This fan art shows that moment well. If you look at the corpse's reflection, it doesn't match the body. Instead, it shows Chisha, the imposter who used his ability to impersonate others to deceive the great calamity and die in his lord's place. The emperor's view of the world was deeply influenced by the sacrifice of his closest aide. Vincent couldn't understand how someone who supposedly obeyed him only out of fear and authority would go so far as to give his life for him. He didn't understand how someone would help him with something that wasn't their job. Although the emperor didn't like being compared to Subaru, at this point in the story, both of them were forced to question why others showed them kindness at all. After seeing things differently, the emperor adopted a new attitude. This helped him face the strongest enemy his nation had ever had, with Subaru's support. Honestly, when I think about Vincent Wallachia, I want to make a video to explain why so many people who read web novels like him. Even now, I've never seen a ReZero character tier list where the emperor is ranked below first place. In fact, it's common to see him placed alongside Subaru or even above him. I'll be setting a goal on my stream for that video I just mentioned. It'll be tough because I'll need to go back through all my notes on the Wallachia arc, which has nearly 180 chapters, not to mention the 67 extra side chapters tied to it. While I work toward that goal, I'll keep working on the video response I mentioned earlier, as well as other videos I have planned outside this universe. If you'd like to support and encourage me to make more ReZero content, please click the link in the description of this video. If not, please like and comment on this video. These actions will help the algorithm more than you'd imagine. I'd like to thank Marcos for supporting the channel with a membership. I can't make money from this channel until I get 1,000 subscribers, so these kinds of subscriptions are very helpful. I also want to thank all my subscribers on my Spanish channel. I know they don't really watch this channel, but I still want to thank them. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, you'll probably also enjoy my one about the 5 strongest losers in the series.